we'll come to different type of, so we'll understand what are the different types of rights and then move to, how is fundamental rights linked to preamble and definition of state, so on and so forth. So before we move into fundamental rights, we should understand what are the various different types of rights which are there. These are the 4 different types of rights. One is called natural rights. What do you mean by natural rights? Natural rights are those rights which nature has given to every living being. It's technically something which every living being, including an animal, is supposed to enjoy, and even more so, Homo sapiens or mankind. So these are some rights which human beings are born with. It is bestowed on them. It is given to them by nature, and nobody has the right to take it away. My right to life, once I am born, I should be free to live. My liberty, I should be free to do what I want to do. And of course, guys, these are all in a democratic setup, and India is of course a democratic setup, and natural rights are those which man enjoyed even in a state of nature. Your right to live and the right to liberty and do what you want. So that is the first type of right. So in fact, pursuit of happiness, right? Nobody can give you happiness. They can only allow you to pursue happiness. Happiness is a personal state of mind, isn't it? So nobody can guarantee you happiness, isn't it? Because the only thing the state can guarantee is an environment where you can do what you want to do and feel happy, because happiness is a personal state of mind. But anyways, having said that, life, liberty is considered to be the basic natural rights that every human being should enjoy. Then comes fundamental rights. What do you mean by fundamental rights in the Indian context? These are rights which are enumerated. Enumerated means what? They are listed. The courts can, of course, through their interpretation add, for example, right to privacy was declared as a fundamental right under Article 21 recently. So the courts can interpret and say that this is also part of fundamental rights. But otherwise, what is fundamental rights in the Indian context? Those rights which are listed and guaranteed in Part 3 of the Indian Constitution. So those are called as fundamental rights. Now tell me, why are these called as fundamental rights? Have this question in mind. Your answer you will get when we link fundamental rights to preamble. First, let's understand what are the various 4 types of rights. Then move to fundamental rights. And the starting point for fundamental rights will be linking the fundamental rights with the preamble and understanding what part of the preamble it is trying to reflect. And then we will go to, what do you mean by a state, what is fundamental rights and what is a state, what is the definition of a state, what are the restrictions on the state with respect to fundamental rights. So those are the basic principles or the basic philosophies that we'll try to understand. So why they are called as fundamental rights? Just keep thinking. Of course, listen to what I'm saying next, but just keep thinking about that. We'll come to it in a couple of minutes after we complete the other 2 type of rights. Now the third type of right is what is called as a constitutional right. Now what are they? They are mentioned in the Constitution. They are provided in the Constitution. Fundamental rights also provided in the Constitution. Constitutional rights also provided in the Constitution. What is the difference? The difference is fundamental rights are enumerated and guaranteed in Part 3. You have the right to move the Supreme Court of India directly if your fundamental rights are violated, because they are fundamental, they are basic. Whereas constitutional rights are those rights which are kept outside of Part 3 but still very important. That is why they have a constitutional status. And they can be removed only if the constitution is amended, not otherwise. And if they are part of the basic structure, even that cannot be done. We'll understand all these terms, basic structure and all those things as we move forward in the fundamental rights class. But constitutional rights are those rights which are outside of Part 3, but which are nonetheless guaranteed in the Constitution, and they may be given in the form of various laws, right? But they find a mention in the Constitution. Right to property was earlier a fundamental right, but in 1978 in the 44th Amendment Act, it was moved out of fundamental rights and it was made a constitutional right under Article 300A of the Constitution. Your right to vote, right to contest elections is all given in the Constitution. These are constitutional rights which cannot be taken away. without an amendment to the constitution. Of course, right to vote and all is part of basic structure because free and fair election is a basic structure. But they are not fundamental, right? You cannot move the Supreme Court directly if any of these rights are violated. But still, they are very important and they are mentioned in the constitution. And what is the third type of rights? Or the fourth type of rights? They are called as legal rights. So what is legal rights? Provided by a statute or a law. So these are rights which are provided either by acts of parliament or they can be provided by acts of state legislature as well. Right? Example that comes to your mind immediately. Think for a second, then I'll give the answer. I hope you have thought of some. Yes? So right to information. Right? RTI Act, all of you are aware, 2005. Right to work, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, again of 2005. These are examples of legal rights because they are provided through acts of parliament in the present case. Right? So these are rights which are given as part by an act of parliament. They can be amended, repealed technically again if they are not part of the basic structure. If they are part of the basic structure, they cannot be repealed. But otherwise, you know, if these are rights which are provided through statute and can be taken away or modified. For example, MGNREGA today says that 100 days of work will be guaranteed. Right? So tomorrow you want to increase it to 200 days. You can do that. And tomorrow, let's say the economy has really picked up and people are not, people are better off and you feel that okay, 100 days is not required anymore, the government need not have to spend so much of money on this, only 50 days needs to be given, they can reduce it to 50 days also. And maybe, hopefully, in near future, we will be so self-sustaining and everyone will be gainfully employed that this act itself may not be required. Yeah, it's possible. So these are the various 4 types of rights. And in the Indian context, right? So I'm erasing this. I hope all of you have understood this. So in the Indian context, we have fundamental rights which are enumerated and guaranteed in part 3. We have fundamental rights which are enumerated and guaranteed in part 3. We have constitutional rights which are provided in the constitution outside of part 3. And we have legal rights which are provided by a statute or a law. In the Indian context, technically, there is nothing called as natural rights. But having said that, it doesn't mean that we don't have right to life and liberty, right? Right to life and liberty is basic article 21 under the fundamental rights. So the natural rights in India are subsumed under the fundamental rights. But there is nothing called as natural rights which you can go and enforce in a court of law in India. You can go and enforce fundamental rights. That too, you can directly approach the Supreme Court if you want, or even the High Courts. You can go and enforce constitutional right as per the provisions of the law which and the constitutional provisions which provide for that right. And you can go and enforce a legal right also as per the provisions which is given in the respective acts which provide that legal right. Yes? So I hope you understood what are the different types of rights.